if you are producing a proven build-up of responding to negative reviews with positive sentiment, you might actually be able to flip that review. And that, I think, is the end goal. You want to try and see if you can flip that review and maybe possibly add to your overall score and metric.
Welcome to this episode of the Community Lounge, the podcast where I chat with community managers from the video games industry who tell me their story, talk about the challenges they face, and share tips to help other community managers do their job better. I'm your host, Steve McLeod. Now, before I begin today's episode, I want to tell you quickly about the guides we are creating for community managers. Some of these guides are already finished and we've been getting great feedback about them. Topics we've covered so far include your first week as a community manager, what actually matters, burnout, recognizing it, dealing with it and preventing it, and becoming a community manager, real life stories. You'll find all of our guides and past episodes at featureupvote.com/thecommunitylounge. You'll find that link in the description. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe to this podcast so that you don't miss out on future episodes. Okay, on with the show. Today I'm joined by Ray Willmott in Wales. Ray is currently juggling his time between two roles. He is the social media and community manager at Curveball Games, and he's the founder at Ready Mix Consult, which is a great name. Welcome to the show, Ray.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Ray, why don't we start at the very beginning? Tell me how you got into community management.
Yeah, it's a great question. So for me, so for a long time, I wanted to get into games. So I think that's been many people's aspiration who probably watched the show. I think that came from a love of like playing games when I was 5, and just playing all sorts of systems. I think I started out on like Commodore and the Amiga, like really way back, cause I'm old. Basically for a long time, I was working in local government. So I was one of my first jobs I got because my mother was there. And I managed to get like an administrative role. And so I was working in local government for like 10 years and where I live. And it was just a mix of roles. It was working in like social services, it was working in housing, it was working in education. But like, I think I got to this point where I was like, the passion for games had obviously never died because I was still playing games. And I think I always just wanted to see how I could do it because I was seeing like journalists like doing these incredible articles and I was seeing all the amazing work that people were writing for games. And eventually I started looking at just some like websites, who were looking for volunteer work and I just put my name forward. I was very lucky to get accepted to do review a couple of games. And that's just basically how I got my start. Like I basically just started just doing odd reviews for games, some news posts.
This was paid work?
This was volunteer. To begin with. I think, and I kind of needed that experience anyway, because I didn't feel like I was writing in a way that made sense or worked for magazines or for outlets. But gradually over time, that then turned into paid work. Yes. I actually set my own website up briefly for a while, worked with some people there, started going to more events. And that eventually led me into getting to the point about community management. So I had a hybrid role at Pocket Gamer. Which basically allowed me to do news posts. It allowed me to do, I was actually looking after a community called the App Army, who some people may be aware of. And they basically, it was like finding a new mobile game for them to play every week, right? So whatever was kind of new on the App Store, we would just find that game, work with the publisher and then get some codes for them to play it. And then they would do like a snippet, an article on that. And that also then extended to me becoming a community manager because I was helping on social media. I was promoting articles that were on the site. And so it was kind of a nice halfway house to get me into the social community side of things, but then also maintaining what I was doing for the last however long. And then from that, then I just started building into other roles. Like I worked at a children's entertainment company for a while doing their social media. I briefly had to leave the games industry for a while. I went back to life sciences. I did some social media work there, which was kind of interesting. But then my biggest and main role was working at Perp Games and CodeSync, where I was doing the social media for them for a long time and community management of building Discords and such. And then in more recent years, I've been working in brand. So, interesting, it's probably an interesting segue, but a lot of the work that I was doing in community and social actually helped train me to become a brand manager because, I feel like there was, by extension in the smaller teams, we didn't have de facto dedicated brand product managers, but from like the work that I was doing, like building plans and materials and such and tone of voice, those are natural like linking points to becoming a brand manager.
There's so much there. There's so much you've told us.
A lot to unpack.
But yeah, a couple of things. First, people in community management roles often worry, like, what can I do next if this doesn't work out? And you make a really good point that there is a natural path there into brand type work, because you are the brand often in a small team as a community manager. You are the brand, at least as it's represented externally. And the other thing, really interesting, before I started recording these podcasts episodes, I would have guessed that community managers almost 100% start young. Like they do it when they're 18 or they're 20 or something. And I find about half and half of the guests, so about half started young and about half had another career first, like yourself. And they come in such a diverse world. So that's really interesting. Hey, do you miss the local government work?
Yeah, I mean, just to touch on your point there. Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. I started, my real start was at 30, right? So, I mean, I'd had a good, 10 to 10-year career prior to getting into games. So, it's not and I sometimes get sad about that because I think like, if only I'd been able to start 10 years earlier, where would I be today? But it's hindsight and such. Yes and no. I think there's obviously, as well as I do, the games industry is a little bit in flux at the moment, between, redundancies, layoffs, there's a very volatile nature around things, which is obviously really, really awful to see. And I think the difference there with local government particularly is that there is more security generally. They've obviously had redundancies. Absolutely. I've seen waves of redundancies there, and I've seen, people have to take pay cuts. There's been strike action. So, I mean, there's been a lot of that as well when I've been working there. But I think in general, like when you have your dedicated pension system and you have your dedicated annual leave, and, not that I would recommend it, but I used to know of people who were on long-term sick leave for as long as 6 months, and that was all paid, right? I mean, whereas if you're talking in games now, it's adjustment. Sometimes you're lucky if you get more than 2 weeks. Just benefits like that, I mean, that security to know that you can be ill, you can take the time you need to recover, and, you're not going to be kind of just axed or left to the side. So I think there are things like that, which I think are missing, and I do think about, and just the variety of work was pretty good. Like I said, I had some incredible stories. I worked in social services for a long time as a minute taker, and I would go to people's houses. I would be literally sat there listening to conversations about, the difficulties of their family lives and the hardships that they go through. And it was just so interesting and sad as well to hear these stories of how people started their life in such a difficult way and how privileged I was to sit where I sit, So it really adds a weight and a perspective to things sometimes when, you are like, we're working in games and it's a massive privilege to do so. But it's not life and death,
Yeah. And how has that local government work prepared you for your work in community and social?
I think, it's the working on the variety of things as mentioned. So, I mean, obviously having worked in different sectors, everyone has different challenges, different expectations. And I think because of that, working with people, working with the public generally, I think that massively helps me in terms of, I've always been able to talk to people openly, always been able to be friendly and communicative, and I think that's quite an important skill to have as a community manager, because you are basically, talking about, you are talking to people on a daily basis, right? From all over the world. You almost have to always be on, in that sense. So, I mean, that part of it, definitely. But I think also just because in local government, you also have to be careful what you say. You have to be careful what you do. You can't, you are generally, there are certain things you cannot talk about because, you can't disclose the nature of the business. So I think that is a huge part of it as well, because, we will have access to incredibly confidential information that is contractually obligated, or there may be elements to it that you can't say certain things or reveal certain things because you're bound to it. So I think getting used to that style and mindset and way of thinking really does help you to prepare you for these sorts of things, because you are on the spot like all the time, 24/7, and there are chances for slip ups, because of course there are, but but like you're just trying to get back on track and find ways to work around it.
Yeah, that's actually a strong similarity between the two jobs. I hadn't thought of that. We didn't touch on the two roles. Tell us about why you have two roles, how they work together, what they are.
Yeah, sure thing. So, I mean, to be honest, predominantly at the moment, I am working with Curveball Games. So I recently joined the team there as their social community lead. Very small team, very small publisher. Started like really sort of gain momentum last year. And so as a result of that, we're a very small team. We're working similar to structure that I've had previously at like Coatsink and Put Games, where, you know, we've kind of all mucked in together to build the wider, you know, remit and working around the products we have. So that is my full-time day-to-day job. That's what I do. But on the side, I do also have, so I've been working on a YouTube channel, which I've built, which is Ready Mix Gaming, which is an extension of Ready Mix Console. I've been doing some freelance work for other companies as well. So I've mentioned I previously worked with Raw Fury, Wells Interactive, places like that. But then I've also been doing some bit jobs where I can support with other people. So they might say, hey, can you maybe advise me on this thing? Or can you help me with this, or help prepare a plan for this, beat that I've got coming up. So occasionally, or even there might be some community support even, which is quite interesting, because sometimes they'll be like, oh, actually, I need an extra pair of hands to help me in the Discord this weekend. Can you help me out? Sure thing, So I think that's kind of where the freelance side of things is working at the moment. It's usually in my own free and spare time. So it's outside of the typical 9 to 5. It's just about kind of like making sure that I'm keeping a work-life balance, which I think is always the tricky thing with these things, is that you have to try, find time for yourself to go out for a meal, to go to the pub to do quiz, to walk the dog, so it's just finding time for yourself as well, which is, I think, is the tricky bit.
Yeah. I think it's really wise actually to do the extra consulting work, because it also keeps you very well connected, well networked. You never know when, in this industry, you never know when you're going to need that network to depend upon. And also it keeps you exposed to new ideas and so on.
I think that's probably the big reason why I set up the consulting. So I set it up in officially like in December, because that's when I started properly getting contracts. And I have unfortunately been part of waves of redundancies, and I have unfortunately lost my job.
Yeah.
Who hasn't at this point, right? Which is a sad indictment of the industry, unfortunately. But I feel like it's a relatable story, unfortunately. But I think that allowed me to maybe think, okay, well, I don't want to put myself in this difficult situation again where, I don't know where I'm going to be in a couple of years' time. So if I have something I can own and maintain myself, and I can work with people, as you say, build the network, keep talking to people, then hopefully, I won't need to be worrying about these things in a few years' time. So it's just a way, I guess, I described it, betting on myself a little bit, which I think more people should do. And they should really feel confident. Once you build up a base of skills, once you've had time to refine those, I think, it's important to just like say, actually, do you know what? I do know my job. I do know what I'm doing, and I can hopefully help other people when they need it.
There's some people I've met via this podcast, a couple of people who stand out in my mind who have done that so well that I think it's almost impossible for them to be unemployed for an extended period of time. They've done such a good job that if they were to say on LinkedIn today, looking for a position, they would have 5 people reach out to them. And, that doesn't come easy. To get in that situation, you really do have to bet on yourself and do what you're saying.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of topics I wanted to talk to you about. You let me know in advance that these were topics you had some experience in.
Yeah.
One is about the benefits of community management for Steam reviews. Not everybody wants great Steam reviews. So this one I thought I needed to get you to tell me about. Tell me more about this. How does community management help Steam reviews?
Yeah, so I think what we're seeing more recently is that Steam reviews are just growing in relevance all the time. So even more so, and obviously, I as an ex-journalist myself, and I say this with all the respect and love in the world, this is even in spite of press and critic reviews. Like, I think those are massively important. They have their place. But what we're seeing at the moment is it's almost a bit like the Rotten Tomato situation, I liken it to, right? So you have the audience score and you have the critic score. So the critic score is usually somewhere down here, and then the audience score can be right up there. So I feel like that's sort of what's happening at the moment in the games industry, is we're having, a very similar disparity where people are disagreeing with the critics and they have their own opinions on things. And so you can have these wildly different views, right? And so I think because of that, and because those community reviews actually in many ways, because we're so centered on Steam for a lot of the products that we do, and this is talking specifically more about Steam, I suppose, it affects the algorithm, right? So, if your game isn't overwhelmingly positive, you immediately are going to be more favorable to Steam. They're going to promote your game more. They're going to talk more about it. You're going to get the top billing. They're going to offer new opportunities and deals and offers to you, daily deals, things like that. So it immediately opens the floodgates to potential. And so maintaining that is so important for your game, because equally, if you're staying in overwhelmingly positive, you're going to be more attractive to people as well, right? Because they're going to see, oh, well, this game has been reviewed so well by 5,000 people. Clearly, this must be worth my time and energy. And if it's in a sale, I'm going to grab it. So I think maintaining that's very important. Now, there is ways of doing this, of course. So
that's what people want to know. What other ways?
So obviously, when we're talking about positive reviews, are they always worth responding to? Depends. And I think, when you're in a situation where someone is just being very nice and polite about it, you could reply to that and say that we really appreciate, thank you for your support. And that's a lovely gesture to have. But I think what people are tending to do is focus more on the negative reviews, where, for instance, if you have, oh, this game broke because of X glitch and I don't get past it and I've refunded it because I'm in my 2-hour window, and and so you get that sort of dialogue. And where I think we're seeing a change there is a community manager or maybe the developer. It could be either or, depending on the structure of your team. They're going into the review, they're replying to that saying, hey, I just released a patch that directly repairs this exact issue that you're having. Obviously, no obligations, but maybe take the time to check it out again if you feel so inclined. We'd love to get your feedback. We'd love to maintain your support. And I think it's the presentation of how you respond to people, and it's about the battles you pick, I suppose, or the comments you choose. I think it's, obviously I would never suggest to someone, if you have, say, 10,000 reviews, don't try and reply to every single one, because you're going to be there all day. As lovely as it would be to actually have that one-to-one connection with people, and I'm an advocate for that, being able to talk to people one-to-one and learn about their experiences. I think that's lovely. But I think, just being very selective and mindful about the ones you're picking at. And also, when you are responding to one of those negative reviews about the patches and things like that, make sure that if it's an issue that's fixable or something has been fixed, those are the ones probably to target, rather than something obscure that only happened to this one person. And you probably will never be able to replicate that in the game, because that's almost certainly going to set you up for failure. But if you are producing a proven, build-up of responding to negative reviews with positive sentiment, you might actually be able to flip that review. And that I think is the end goal. You want to try and see if you can flip that review, and maybe possibly add to your overall score and metric, and affect the algorithm even more. So it's all kind of parts of the system, I guess.
I like it. So it's an example of community managers not just being posting on social media. That's often the stereotype they get, but actually doing something to improve the chances of the game to be a financial success. And I mean, the games need to be a financial success to exist, to continue existing. Great,
exactly.
Great. I like it.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting thing, because I guess I'll go on a little bit of a tangent. We did talk about that previously before the call. I think when I first started in social and community, there was definitely an uphill battle to get funding, get budget, get justification to the business. We need this person in place. Can't you just do it? It's only social media. Or can't you just do it? It's just responding to a couple of comments. It's not, that's not a full-time job, surely. As you and I both know, it very much is, and I'm sure everyone listening to this knows it's a full-time job and then some. But that's the mindset I think has shifted from this maybe mentality, 5 to 10 years ago to today, where we're looking at a very different, and almost it's a crucial member of the team now, because that community manager is now not only, responding to Steam reviews, they're in the Steam discussions as well. So you've got the topics and people are listing different reviews. So they're responding to those, trying to get that information. They're doing Steam VODs to try and get the visibility on the Steam page. So you've got the videos you've got there. On top of that, they're often, as we both know, they're hybrid roles. So they are doing social media. So they're doing they're doing Twitter, Blue Sky, Threads, wherever it is this week, Instagram, creating TikToks, doing that kind of thing. And then there's again the mindset on top of that, where I think, indie developers these days are often doing daily content on socials, so to try and beat algorithms there as well, to try and get that visibility and break through that noise. And so almost certainly now you've gone from a role that was, don't know if we can justify this, to this is about a team of 5, if not 6 people could be doing this one job, and it's often put on one person's shoulders. So it's a Herculean thing.
Yeah. I think even worse, if you're doing social media as well as everything else, you're doing it from a place of tiredness, of exhaustion. And it's just hard to deal with some of the more negative things you see on social media and you end up like replying to it in a bad way, and so on. Yeah.
It happened. It happened. And, and again, we are human, right? And I think this is the mindset of where AI comes into this as well, because, like obviously there probably are tools with AI, and I'm sure AI will continue to grow in relevance in this space where people are responding to that through AI tools, right? But I think having the human connection is so important for these roles. And, that's something I've learned coming from, that local government background and into it, is that, I think people appreciate knowing they're talking to a person, and they appreciate that. Yeah. But equally, that does come with its challenges. If I'm still awake at midnight and responding to someone who's just woke up in their time zone, I'm going to be a bit tired. But,
that's actually, so that's obviously an unhealthy way to work, which is a really good segue into any tips you might have for first-time community managers on how to go about their job and how to do it well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the first thing I would say immediately is please don't burn yourself out, because these kind of roles really can burn you out, and they can be very tiring. They can be very demanding. They can be very exhausting. It's a lot to take on. And as I just sort of highlighted before this, there's a lot of responsibilities now. There's a lot of different rungs to this ladder now. So we're not just talking about manning a couple of social channels. Now we've got a full elaborate system, like where sometimes you've got community managers running play tests, sometimes you've got them, there's all sort of strings to this now. So I think it's worth looking at, because I think what's probably going to happen, I hope this is what happens, is that we start having more dedicated individuals to these resources rather than this is all one person's job. So hopefully we get to that mindset of this is growing and building outward. So what I would say is look at the different ways you can be a community, how you can support communities. So maybe do look at specific channels, maybe look at however subreddits managed, or however Discords are built, or, and looking specifically about what people are doing right and wrongly there, making some notes to yourself, like, I would probably do this differently, or actually this is really, really good. I'm going to make a note of this for, myself. I think that's always a good thing to do, and being active in those forums as well, because a lot of people that I've met over the years have probably started their role either similar to me, kind of doing the volunteer route, getting into by journalism, or even doing it by being a volunteer part of a Discord, or volunteer part of a forum, or a subreddit, and they've actually been a very instrumental part of. And I think you've had guests on your on here who have had similar routes as well. It's like just using that experience and building that experience and learning how to do the job by proxy, and then eventually start thinking, do you know what, maybe I do feel confident applying for this, and I've got a body of work which I can link people to and share, and this is what I've done, and I've been a very appreciated mod in this forum, or a very appreciated spokesperson in that forum. So I guess that's how I would look at it for now, but it's always difficult, I think, because these roles are they're both far and few between at the moment, unfortunately, because of where we are. And also it's a case of they are very competitive.
There's an episode that we've recorded already, but it's not yet published. It will be published by the time this episode is published. With Joshua, who at 14 was already a moderator on a subreddit for a really well-known brand. It's just amazing when you're talking about the people getting involved in Reddit really young. It's incredible the stuff you can do. And I guess nobody ever asked him his age, because you're just a name on screen.
Yeah, exactly. You are you rarely go by your own name. You probably have some kind of, I don't know, like Fox.
And I think you shouldn't. You're right. You probably shouldn't go by your own name.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah, precisely. You want to make sure you protect yourself.
You said the advice you'd give for a first-time community manager is to not get burnt out. But do you have any more specific tips for how not to get burnt out?
How not to get burnt out? I think you need to be disciplined with yourself. And I know that's extremely difficult when you're starting out, because you're going to want to be eager to impress. And I have done it myself. So this almost feels hypocritical, me even saying this. But I'm learning from my own mistakes and saying, like, just be very, very careful about what you take on, what you accept, what you agree to, and just try to just be, don't try to do everything all at once. Take your time, build up very, very slowly. And maybe by doing so is like setting yourself, maybe create a Trello board, maybe just create, right, these are the things that I need to do. These are the nice to haves, and these are the I'll get to in 6 months, 12 months time. Right. And so you've kind of organizing your time a little bit there. But I mean, just also be very transparent with your goals, like with your leader or your boss or whoever it might be, or your line manager, and say, right, okay, this is what I'd like to achieve. It's going to take this amount of time. So don't expect results within 2 weeks. Because I think that's important to having that open, transparent, open dialogue with the person who's responsible for you. So, you are generally, when you start roles, you're on a probation period. So you have to kind of like be, aware of that, and just like, right, okay, I'm being monitored during my time here. So I need to be careful what I'm doing and what I'm not doing. So just have that transparent, open path to where you want to get to, but don't like try to do it all at once. And I think that's so important, is that you, even if it becomes like focusing on one channel, building one channel to begin with, and then going somewhere else, and then looking, once you've kind of got down to a state, then looking at something else and working that, and then eventually getting to a stage where hopefully they're working alongside each other. That would be my key thing, is that these roles, as we know, are very prone to burning yourself out. So just try to take your time, and don't try to respond to everything. Like, really do give your time to switch off. Like, even if you have to delete apps from your phone to do it, because I know the difficulty. You see the notification pop up, like, I really want to reply to this, but I should be sleeping. So
have you deleted apps from your phone for that reason, or is it one of these things you haven't brought yourself to do?
I mean, it's a bit of both. I have started. I would say in later years I've done it more. Cool. Especially on holiday. I think holiday is probably the time I've done that more, because I have been guilty of being on holiday, and I've like, I'll just quickly pop onto Slack and see what's happening. And like, it's such a slippery slope. And again, I say this almost hypocritically because I have done it, and I probably will do it in the future. But I think just be mindful of making sure that you are, not overdoing it and not overburdening yourself, and just taking care of yourself, which I think is the most important thing any of us can do.
Really good answer. Hey, you said you got your first community management job at 30. How well do you remember when you started, how you learned to do your job? Were there resources you used? Were there people who helped you? How did you learn in your very first days as a community manager how to do your job?
Yeah, I kind of inherited the job from someone else. So I think that was an immediate help, because he'd already was able to go through the, the basics and stuff. So like, oh, okay, well, this is the process that we do here, and we use this tool. We monitor things from using this metric. And so that was immediately helpful, because I had that starting point, rather than like, right, I'm not starting from nothing. So I think that immediately was helpful. I'm grateful for that. And I would hope that in most cases with people getting their start, they have someone who can be that person for them as well, so they can give them the lay of the land, and they can give them kind of the basics. I think also we used, I can't remember exactly which tool it was, but I think we did use a social media management tool, which is also massively helpful. So whether that's something like Sprout Social, or whether that's something like, like, I can't remember any names now, because I'm using Sprout at the moment, so that's just the one that's in my head.
Do you mean something like Buffer, where you can schedule posts and keep track of responses? Yeah,
precisely.
Okay, we use Buffer.
Yeah. And that's great. I used Buffer for a long time as well. So I think, using those tools, because you can get some metrics from there, you can get a feel for the kind of posts that have previously worked. You can see what hasn't worked so well, and you can kind of make some assumptions based on that, and then look at some of the sentiment you've been getting. And I think that having a bit of a base of work to base it on is great. And that helped me massively. And I think also just I would also spend a lot of time looking at what other channels are doing. So for instance, at Pocket Game, when I was doing the role, there weren't actually, I don't know if there were too many, when I started, there were too many like platforms like Pocket Gamer that were really doing that. Like, I think what was probably happening, similar to what I was saying, is that people were doing this on top of their other jobs. So you'd have like the news writer was just doing the social posts as well. But I was in that unique spot where this was kind of dedicated role to work on social and on community side of things, which is really interesting. So they were kind of ahead of the curve in that sense. But I was definitely watching what they were doing, and obviously they were getting some great engagement. They had a lot of followers to work with. I think we were mostly in Twitter at that point, where Twitter was still Twitter and not X. And so that was usually the base where everyone was gravitating towards, and where so it was just kind of like spending a lot of time looking on that, what was working, what wasn't, and what trends were effective, and where we could latch onto those a little bit. So. Yeah, but I think hopefully having someone to help you usher you in is a great, is useful to start these roles.
So you said you inherited the position. Was the previous person still around inside the company for you to talk to? Or was it like a clean break? They were gone and you just had to look at documentation and so on?
Yeah, I think they were still there for about a month. And then they moved
great.
into... Yeah, so I had a good bit of time to sit and chat with them, and I know again that's quite a nice privilege I had. Some people are literally, as you say, it's a clean break. You maybe get a day to kind of like hand stuff over, just like quick, so you got a bit of that going there. So. But I was quite lucky there, I think. But equally, I think it's always difficult to have. These roles are never easy anyway, because you always have minds. You've seen how things have worked before, and you maybe want to change some things, or you maybe want to put your own stamp on things. And so you inevitably, hopefully, get to that position where you've got the basics you need, and then you can start building your stamp on what you want to do, or what your vision for things. But I think having that proper time to sit with the person helps a lot, because you understand what the expectation is, I think, more than anything else, and then where you can iterate.
Ray, we're running out of time, and I still have the most important question for you.
Oh, great. Looking forward to it.
What games have you been playing lately?
Well, I've been playing quite a few on my YouTube recently. I actually play a lot of retro games, because my game on there is something called Mixed Emotions, where I go through how games are meaningful and important to me. So for instance, I did one on Tetris Effect about my dad, when my dad passed. And then I've also done one about Mario Brothers, which got me through bullying, right? So I try to mix it up a little bit. But what I'm currently playing, I played Hades 2 recently, because that just dropped onto Game Pass, which is probably my favorite game of last year. Don't tell Raw Fury, because of Blueprints, which is also a magnificent game. And I have been playing Pragmata, actually, which just released last week, which is a magnificent game. I think that's been years in development, and so that's been super cool to see that come out, and very entertaining. Love it.
So retro for you means games from about 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 30 years ago?
Probably 30, exposing myself a little bit. Yeah, well, to give you some context, my favorite game of all time is The Secret of Monkey Island, which came out in 1987.
Wow, good choice.
A bit back.
Now, we will, of course, have a link to the YouTube channel you mentioned. We will have a link to that in the show notes, so people can see these retro games you've been playing.
Thank you.
I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but I think I'll do that this evening after dinner, after my daughter's in bed, see what you've got there.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, well, it's time to finish. So, Ray, thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you so much. I mean, this has been really, really fun, and I hope I didn't ramble too much.
You rambled just the right amount. Where can listeners get in touch if they'd like to know more about what we've discussed today?
Yeah, so I mean, you can find us all at Curveball Games. So we've currently just announced 2 games, Sente and Planted. So you can find a lot of information about those 2 games there. You can also find about me, readymixconsult.com, and I'm on LinkedIn, so you can find all the information there. And as you mentioned, there's also a YouTube channel there, which is Ready Mix Gaming, which is just an offshoot of that.
Okay, and of course, all of that will be in the show notes. Okay, bye, Ray.
Thank you so much for your time. Take care.
Bye, everyone. Thanks again for listening to this episode of the Community Lounge podcast. If you enjoyed it, please spread the word and share it with friends and colleagues who you think would also enjoy it. And to make sure you don't miss an episode, subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify or your favorite podcast app. And please give the show a rating or give a review, as this helps listeners find the podcast and it makes me feel good. You can find past episodes or learn more about the show at featureupvote.com/thecommunitylounge. And finally, I'm going to leave you with a short ad for Feature Upvote, the player feedback platform I created and the sponsor of the show. Bye.
Your players love your game, but the community has ideas, and lots of them. The trouble is, their feedback is scattered across Discord, forums, social media, and somewhere deep within your inbox. You feel like you are drowning in feedback. That's where Feature Upvote comes in. With Feature Upvote, you can centralize all your player feedback in one place. Set up a feedback board where your community can post suggestions and vote for their favorites. The most popular ideas rise to the top, giving you a clear, data-driven roadmap. Pages are fully customizable to match your game's art style and vibe. With no logins required, no friction, just instant organized feedback from the people who care most. Stunlock Studios, the team behind V Rising, uses Feature Upvote as a centralized, organized way to collect and prioritize player feedback. With spam filtering, duplicate merging, and integrations for tools like Jira and Discord, nothing slips through the cracks. As a result, more player satisfaction and a stronger, loyal community. Get started today and get the flood of player feedback under control.